A paper that basically says change your prompt slightly gets accepted to one of the top machine learning conferences. Is ICML becoming the new psychology? A paper titled Verbalized Sampling: How to Mitigate Mode Collapse and Unlock LLM Diversity has been accepted to ICML this year. The arXiv link is 2510.01171. The authors are Jiayi Zhang, Simon Yu, Derek Chong, Anthony Cecilia, Michael R. Toms, Christopher D. Manning, and Wai-Yin Shi. The paper is 83 pages with 31 figures and 44 tables. And its main idea boils down to a very simple prompt engineering trick. Change the way you prompt the model and you get more diverse sampling. The Reddit post on R Machine Learning asks whether this kind of prompt engineering belongs at a top-tier machine learning conference and whether the poster is being too rigid in that criticism. Let us break down what the paper actually does and why it sparked this debate. The problem the paper tackles is something called mode collapse. Post-training alignment often reduces LLM diversity, meaning the model starts producing very similar or repetitive outputs. The authors argue this is not just an algorithmic limitation of alignment methods. Instead, they identify a fundamental data-level driver, typicality bias in preference data. Annotators systematically favor familiar text because of well-established findings in cognitive psychology. People naturally gravitate toward what they recognize and find comfortable, which means the preference data itself is biased toward the typical and the conventional. That bias gets baked into the model and causes mode collapse. Their solution is verbalized sampling, which is a simple training-free prompting strategy. Instead of just asking the model to generate a response, you prompt it to verbalize a probability distribution over a set of possible responses. The paper gives the example of telling the model to generate 5 jokes about coffee and their corresponding probabilities, by forcing the model to think in terms of distributions rather than single outputs. It circumvents the mode collapse problem. This is purely an inference time remedy. No retraining, no fine-tuning, no additional model parameters, just a different way of framing the prompt. The comprehensive experiments in the paper show that verbalized sampling significantly improves performance across multiple domains. In creative writing tasks like poems, stories, and jokes, it increases diversity by 1.6 to 2.1 times over direct prompting. It also helps in dialogue simulation, open-ended question answering, and synthetic data generation. And importantly, this diversity boost comes without sacrificing factual accuracy or safety. The authors also observe an emergent trend that more capable models benefit more from verbalized sampling, which makes intuitive sense because a stronger model has a richer distribution to verbalize in the first place. Now here is where it gets interesting. The Reddit discussion around this paper is fascinating because it taps into a much bigger debate in the machine learning community. One commenter draws parallels to psychology's replication crisis from a decade or two ago, when a lot of published research could not be replicated because researchers skipped their introductory statistics courses and misused p-values. The argument is that machine learning is going through a similar reckoning right now. Another commenter says this paper is prompt engineering within a specific underexplored application with theoretical formalization, so it belongs. But others point out that the paper evaluates only 2 models, which feels limited for a top-tier venue. One commenter notes that even someone without domain expertise could come up with such ideas on the spot. And because it is difficult to formulate rigorously, it is hard to guarantee the method truly generalizes. On the other side of the debate, some commenters push back hard against the gatekeeping. One commenter points out that by this logic, the chain of thought paper is also just prompt engineering since it simply asks the model to think step by step. They argue that a large section of researchers have made prompt engineering into a derogatory dog whistle for papers that do not follow their arbitrary pre-2022 standard of what an ML research paper should look like. Another commenter makes a sharp point about the quality of scientific articles. It is less about the methodology in the intervention than in how you evaluate that intervention. If it is stupid but it works and you can make a convincing argument that your evidence demonstrates it works, then you did science. One commenter summarizes it well: it is all in the framing. Get a simple idea and pair it with decent framing of your problem plus rigorous experiments and you can get a long way, including getting accepted to top venues. What this paper and the debate around it tell us is that prompt engineering is evolving from a craft into a legitimate area of scientific study. Verbalized sampling is a genuinely useful inference time trick that improves diversity without any training cost. The fact that it was accepted to ICML shows that the community is willing to publish simple ideas when they are well-motivated, rigorously tested, and theoretically grounded. But the skepticism is also healthy. As one commenter warned, if sloppy marginal tricks with critically weak baselines keep flooding top venues, ML risks sliding into its own reproducibility crisis. The critical factors are criticality, generalizability, and reproducibility of empirical evaluation. This paper passes those bars with its 31 figures and 44 tables of evidence. The question for future prompt engineering papers is whether they will hold that same standard. To summarize what this paper gives us, mode collapse in LLMs has a data-level cause in typicality bias from preference data. Verbalized sampling is a simple training-free prompt trick that boosts creative diversity by 1.6 to 2.1 times. It works across multiple domains without losing accuracy. More capable models benefit more. And the broader debate about whether prompt engineering belongs at top conferences is still very much alive. The paper itself makes a strong case that it does when done with proper rigor and theoretical grounding. The link to the paper is in the description. If you want to dive into the full 83 pages yourself, that link is there. That is the rundown on the verbalized sampling paper accepted to ICML, a simple prompt trick backed by serious experimental evidence that challenges whether mode collapse is really an algorithmic problem or a data problem. I would love to hear your take. Does this belong in a top machine learning conference, or is it just cleverly framed prompt engineering? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this breakdown, subscribe to Neural NoiseX for more deep dives into the papers shaping artificial intelligence. See you in the next one. That is the rundown on the verbalized sampling paper accepted to ICML, a simple prompt trick backed by serious experimental evidence that challenges whether mode collapse is really an algorithmic problem or a data problem. I would love to hear your take. Does this belong in a top machine learning conference, or is it just cleverly framed prompt engineering? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this breakdown, subscribe to Neural NoiseX for more deep dives into the papers shaping artificial intelligence. See you in the next one.